right, man. How you feeling, Van? We good? We good to go?
I'm always good, man. Whenever it's camera lights action, I'm here, baby. And plus, I'm with Simon, bro. So I'm good. Simon, man. This dude be popping off, bro. I'm here.
First of all, I want to this is my name is Lou Valentino. This is Van Hall, and today we have a very, very special guest that, listen, man, his story is beyond. I reached out to him and immediately he reached back out, which to me, I'm not gonna lie, that was the biggest surprise out of this whole thing. The fact that he's open to actually talking to us, and this Simon Ateba, thank you so much for being here with us, man.
Thank you for having me, and I'm so glad to be here.
Listen, man, I the first time I saw you was of course on Tucker Carlson. To me, he is the #1 political commentator out there, the most based, in my opinion.
Did you say most based?
The most based, I think, in my opinion.
Okay. Yeah, he's funny as hell. I didn't like him before. For a long
time. You didn't like him before?
I used to think he was racist as hell, bro. I was like, man, I'm not watching him, bro. For real.
What do you think? What do you think about him, Simon?
No, I like him. I didn't like many things in the right, like, conservative when I just came to the US. It took time for me to really get to relate to people as individuals. When I got here, I was told these are the racists and these are the good guys. And I realized that wasn't true. I saw people on the left who didn't treat me right, and I saw people on the right who didn't treat me right. And I saw Black people who treated me right, and I saw Black people who didn't treat me right. And I saw female who treated me right, and I saw female who didn't treat me right. And so I realized that the best way to really engage with people is to relate with them as individuals. And so I like him. I like Tucker. We are going to be doing something this month. I will be providing details on my Twitter account next week.
You're blowing up on Twitter. Like you're literally blowing up on Twitter every day. Your posts pop up, and I love how consistent you are. I wanna go back real quick before we get into everything that's actually happening today. And Van, I'm gonna let you fill in here. I want to talk about your story, man. I want to talk about, you said something interesting, that you had an AK-47 to your head by pirates. You went through a bunch of things. I kind of, we don't have to go back to the actual day when it actually happened, but I want to talk to you about your story, and just kind of like how you're here now, because you look good, man. First of all, that suit, spanking, I like it. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? Like, you're looking real good. You know what I'm saying? Thanks. So I want you to just talk to us about that story, man, of that day, and how you are able to bounce back, and now you're here, killing it. You're doing your thing.
Yeah. So I always wanted to do journalism. I realized that was the best way to really get to understand people. Usually you meet a lot of people who are also in the journalism business, but who don't really get to know people. When they come to you to do a story on you, they come with their own biases. If you're a Black man, they already have some preconceptions about how Black men should be. If you're a white man, they already see you as a white man and they make some judgment. And sometimes those judgments are not true. And I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to tell people stories. And I wanted to tell their stories as they are, not as I want them to be, not as I would like them to be, not about what people are saying about them. I really wanted to get to know people and tell their stories. And I ended up in the business. I was born in Cameroon, and I traveled from Cameroon to Nigeria, and I did my first degree there, did my second degree there, all in journalism. And while I was there, I began to work for Nigerian newspapers. I used to travel across West Africa, covering really difficult stuff. And I remember I received a grant in 2015 to do a story on Nigerian refugees in Chad and Cameroon. And I got to Chad and I got to Cameroon. I was so excited. I'm going to cover these refugees. geez, no Black person has gone there to really cover them. No one from Africa had gone to the refugee camp to cover them, because most of them had been displaced by Boko Haram. And Boko Haram has been terrorizing, Cameroon, Chad, and some of the countries around West Africa and Central Africa. And people were afraid to go there, and I went to cover them. And I remember being arrested, kept in a jail and accused of being a spy for Boko Haram. And it was really difficult for me. So I've been arrested, accused of being a spy for Boko Haram, kidnapped in a bus in Lagos, dumped in the woods and left for dead, but survived. I've been, I was actually drugged also. You are going to see those stories when I release the pictures in about 2 or 3 weeks. And all those things that happened to me, including when I was attacked by pirates on the Gulf of Guinea with an AK-47 to my head, but also survived. That was the most difficult experience for me, because, the guy can pull the trigger anytime. And so it was really hard for me going through those experiences, but I kept doing my job. I always wanted to be in the US, and I always wanted to tell the US Africa story. I wanted to be that guy who is telling focusing on relationship between US and Africa. And so after many years in journalism, I decided to move to the US to keep doing the same thing. And I had some friends, we had to found a publication called Today News Africa. And right now, that's what we do. We focus on US-Africa relations. So you see me at the White House, the State Department, the Pentagon, USAID, anything that has to do with US and Africa relation, Africa interactions. So you will see me at the US-Africa Summit. You will see me at the Foreign Press Center, where anything that has to do with US-Africa relation. So the way we do it is, we know that we can't be everywhere in Africa. Africa has 55 countries, but we focus on what is happening in Africa that is affecting the US, or what's happening in the US that is affecting Africa. And that has been our focus, and I'm glad to do it. And that's why sometimes I'm a bit surprised when I find it hard to get questions maybe at the White House, because what we are trying to do is actually to do the right thing at the time when China is expanding, China is increasing disinformation and sometimes misinformation against the US. And they're actually sponsoring people, they're sponsoring media houses, they're pushing narratives against the US to say the US is the enemy, the US and democracy is dangerous. And so we are here trying to do the right thing and tell them, hey, we are here, we are trying to do the right thing. You need to give us opportunity to do that, because we could see the danger. And so when we hear some officers in the US saying that we are going to have a war, maybe around 2025, and you know what happened yesterday with the missile that was tested a few hours ago, just to show that, the US is still strong. And you realize it's coming, but the US doesn't seem to be doing the right thing in terms of, how do we strengthen ties between Africa and the US? How do we, and I'm not talking about exploitation, I'm talking about having strong relationship between Africa and the US, not just bringing 50 African leaders to US, like President Biden did last month in December, and didn't even have time to have one-on-one meetings with them. Didn't even post a picture of them on the White House website. And meanwhile, they posted several pictures of the visit that took place before then by President Emmanuel Macron of France. So it's been a long journey.
Van, take it away, man.
I don't know what to say, bro.
Yeah, I don't know what to say either. That's wow.
I was going to interject a couple of times, but your story was so compelling that I had to just sit here and just take it all in, pause. But I think you're an extremely brave, courageous, very kind soul. And it seemed like what you want is not, something that they should even frown upon. You just want everyone to be able to have the same bit of communication, get along together, be represented. You want equal representation, which you don't see being happening right now. I was watching some of your shows, some of your interviews from Fox News, and brother, I didn't know that they had it out for you like that. They won't even let you get 2 words in.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's been tough at the White House. The press secretary now is Karine Jean-Pierre. She's a Black person. She's an African-American person. And so just to rewind for you to give you the backstory. So our publication endorsed President Biden. We were told that President Trump is racist. The New York Times, told us about how he used, the S-whole word against Africans. And so I said, no, I can't endorse someone who doesn't respect Africans, who doesn't respect Black people. And so we endorsed President Biden. And I wasn't covering the White House every day. But I said to myself, hey, President Biden is in the White House. The Democrats are in the White House. I need to now cover it and see how we can strengthen ties between Africa and the US. And that's how I end up covering the White House. And only for me to be there and realize that the discrimination was there and was even worse. And I was a bit surprised because I felt like, officially President Biden was saying, we are the president for the little guy. He took some actions. He signed some executive orders when he came, repealing some of President Trump's policies. And so I felt like I was in a good place. And I felt like we were in a good, we're headed in a good direction.
They sold the dream, huh? They sold the dream.
Yeah, the dream was there.
This is how they got all those votes.
Yeah, exactly. And then the Omicron variant came in. South Africa was the first country to identify it. And because they identified it, the virus was already everywhere, but they were able to sequence it and identify it and name it and alert the WHO and tell them, hey, there's a new variant of 19, and we think that you need to see this. And how did the US react? The US reacted by banning 8 African countries. And among those 8 African countries, 6 of them had 0 cases of the new variant. And so when Jen Psaki, who used to be the press secretary for President Biden, came
That's
to
the white one, right?
Yeah, the white woman, who came there, and she was trying to justify it. And I asked her, how do you justify this? These countries have 0 cases of the variant, 6 of them out of 8, and the variant is in Hong Kong, is in the UK, is in different other countries.
It's all over the UK, and especially in comparison to Africa. My God, but we still do business to them. We still let them.
Yeah, at that particular time in November 2021, you had more cases in the UK, more cases in Hong Kong, more cases in Europe. But the countries they decided to ban, all of them were Black African countries. And so imagine if President Trump had done that. Imagine if President Trump had banned 8 countries, all of them African countries.
They would have fried that boy, man. They would have murdered him online, not physically, but they...
Wow. Yeah, they will have called him, a racist. They will have, they will have made it a big deal. Yeah. And I began to realize that it wasn't. I didn't really see the difference, right? I didn't see the difference between, actually, I saw the only difference I saw was the way the media was reacting when he had to do with President Biden. It was like, when President Trump was there, it was like, no, he's a bad guy. We need to go after him. We need to fire him. We need to attack him. And then when Biden and Jen Psaki came in, they're like, oh my God, no, you can't do this to Jen. It's President Biden. And I began to see the hypocrisy. And And then, so we had a lot of clashes even before, you know, Karine Jean-Pierre was appointed. So when she came in, and I began to realize that they were not treating us right. For instance, you know, how do you explain that you have 50 African leaders who are coming to the US for the US-Africa Summit? And then you have an African journalist who covers the White House and who has been covering the summit every single day for the past 2 months. And you don't have the decency to give him at least one question on the summit that the president of the US is having with 50 African leaders.